Hello there, and welcome back to The Disconnected. I've got a pretty fun one today. We're going to be discussing the 2013 film called New World. So, friend of the channel, Ice, has wanted me to review New World. He actually bought the film for me and gave a little donation and suggested I take a look and wanted to hear my thoughts on it. So this is the best I could do. So now publicly, thank you, Ice. This is amazing. I am so grateful that I've got people like this that are willing to share great cinema with me. I really appreciate you doing this, and I hope that I can live up to the legacy of this film. Speaking of, this film is heralded as like a modern classic in gangster movies, basically. And I want to run down what this film is. This film opens with a sudden death of somebody that overruns basically this like mob syndicate thing in Korea, who has a few factions that have joined together. And with the main guy gone, they are forced to have this funnel of power and get somebody else in charge. Now, the actual film is mostly built around the tension that funnel causes. And I'm going to break it down a little bit because there's so many twists and interesting turns that we take to get here that it's hard to talk about without spoiling things. So there might be some minor / light spoilers here. It's a really interesting and well-made film, and I do want people to check it out. So let's dive into it. Our main character, which I'm not going to be able to say any of these names properly in any way. We have our main character. You'll probably recognize this gentleman from being in Squid Game. That obviously wasn't going to happen for a few more years, so he was a little lesser known at this time. He is somebody that has been undercover in this gang for the last 8 to 10 years, and he wants out. He is tired of doing it. He's got a wife who has a child on the way, and we hear that, and then we hardly see her anymore. That's one of the weird idiosyncrasies of this film. But that's one individual, and then we have another individual that has to fly in from another territory, and he's sort of like this antagonist that comes in and really starts to dial up some of that tension. The actual story here progresses because there is an individual at the local law enforcement that is sort of like pushing these people together to keep the tension and the infighting going. He's basically trying to make them hurt each other so that they're not hurting others in the general public. Now, the characters in this are fairly likable. They are really fleshed out. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to highlight here. You are able to get emotionally invested in a handful of characters really well. You get a lot of time with these people. You see their motivations. You see if they are, morally bankrupt, or if they are morally on the side that you would feel yourself rooting for. And the other people around them are making some choices that are affecting them, obviously. But as you're watching this, you see these stories unfold and intertwine in ways that actually develop. Like there's setups, there's payoffs, there's, the rising tension that you always want, that little bit of a pressure release. Sometimes it happens, other times it erupts. And when I say it erupts very well. This is not a film that shies away from the danger and the brutality of these situations. So about that, one thing I really liked about this film is that it is fairly bloody without being gory. Like, there's another film that released recently that's another Asian film that was Project Wolf Hunting. That movie was made to be a gore fest. It was made to be a splatter film, basically. This is not the case. Now, with New World, you see a lot of blood. I mean, the movie itself opens on an individual being tortured. Like, he has concrete poured into his stomach. He gets cast into a barrel and then thrown into the ocean. So it's not like they shy away from the danger and the brutality of what these characters are going through, but they're not, cutting off a finger and having a fountain of blood spray for 20 seconds or anything like that. It's more realistic in a sense, even though it's still fairly fantastical. But yeah, it's a bloody film, but not gory in a way. So definitely something that I liked about this, actually. Now, with those characters that I mentioned earlier that you see develop, The downside is that you see 5-ish of these characters develop pretty well, but that's it. Most other people in this film are completely dismissed side characters. Like I said, our main protagonist is married. He's got a child on the way. You hear that, and then you hardly see the wife for the rest of the film. She comes in for a scene at the end that's not a very pleasant scene for her, but it's one that you actually see a little bit of a payoff for that storyline. But there was no development on the interim. I couldn't start to gain sympathy for this individual. The only thing that I really gained sympathy for was for her husband. So that being said, this is a very male-centric film. It's clear that this was written from a very male-forward frame of reference. It is a film that feels masculine from start to finish. And there's nothing wrong with that. Different movies have different styles. I'm not saying that's a downside of this whatsoever. That being said, I do think that there were certain things that were left out that maybe we could have had some more development with. But I also don't know when you would add that, because one of my main criticisms on this is this movie feels long. This movie feels very drawn out, especially in Act 2. There's a lot of exposition that makes you... obviously, it fleshes out some of these characters, but it makes you start to drift. If you're somebody that finds it a little difficult to focus on movies, especially sometimes when you're forced to read subtitles throughout, this one's going to have some moments in the middle that are going to maybe have you reaching for your phone or wish that you would just fast forward or something like that. It's still worth it. It is absolutely something that you should pay attention to, but it does feel a little drawn out there in that second act. Our characters here, they have clear motivations. It's not something that you're ever going to question. The actual tension behind these two individuals coming together to vie for this top spot in this organization, it's done in such a way that you actually really like somebody and you actually really don't like the other person. So I think they're able to draw those feelings out from you, which isn't always easy to do, especially in a film like this, and it's done very well. Now, the important thing, it's a gangster film. You got to have decent action scenes, and I will say the parking garage scene and that elevator fight, really well done. If you've seen this or if you're going to see it, just keep in mind the parking garage scene and the elevator fight. It's fantastic. I also want to point out, I kind of want to watch this one again. I feel like I would get a little more out of it knowing that, there are certain people that are not exactly who they say they are. There's this story that basically it feels like the appointing of a new pope, but because it affects so many people, there's a lot of faces that get lost. So having the context of the rest of the film surrounding those faces at the beginning, watching the multiple funerals that we're attending, the drama of how they affect the outside world, the cops spying on the organization to find any intelligence, I feel like I would like this even more on a rewatch. But the crazy thing is, I liked it a lot on first viewing. I think that this is an easy 4 out of 5 for most people. If you like crime films at all, this is a solid 4 out of 5. And for many people, I could see it being even higher. It's really well made. I do want to really highlight one last thing. The cinematography in this movie. There are certain shots that are just simply beautiful. And that's not always the case with films. But in this one, there are a handful of things that even right now, I can picture and be like, you know what? That would look really great if it was framed up on a wall. The one that I really want to highlight right now is that there's a meeting in a soccer stadium that's empty. And as they are giving you this initial scene in the soccer stadium, you see these countless stadium seats. And there are many different shades of blue, but the couple individuals that are meeting in the middle and then all of this sea of blue chairs around them, it is so thoughtfully blocked that I could have paused it and just looked at that for the next 20 or 30 seconds. It was a really great setup shot to lead into this meeting and really draw you into the conversation that was to come. The director is clearly very thoughtful in how he's setting up some of these shots, and it just let me remain intrigued throughout the story that, like I said, for some people, I could see this getting a little cumbersome in the middle. But for me, a lot of this, I was just, man, what are they going to show me next? I really want to see that. So if crime films are your thing, if you like mafia, mob, gangster movies, if you need a break from watching, some of these other films that you're watching and you want a palate cleanser, this could actually be really good at it. And it did get a physical media release, like I showed. This came out from WellGo USA. They do a lot of these great Asian films. And this one, it's fairly cheap, so that has that going for it. It doesn't have a ton of extras on here. There's a stills gallery. I think there's a trailer. But then the main thing that I watched after, there's like a 4.5-5 minute making of. And it's barely even that. It's like some behind the scenes shots. It's fun. I was glad I watched it, but there's not much on here. So to own the film because you like it, you want to watch it a lot, this is a really great way to do it. It looks great. It's a solid Blu-ray disc. It's a budget-friendly disc. Highly recommend this one. The link to purchase this will be in the description below, as well as my link for my Patreon. And if you are interested in supporting, helping choose some of the films that I watch and discuss on this channel, please take a look at that Patreon link down below in the description. We'd be thrilled to have you. You've got all kinds of different tiers to choose from. In the meantime, there's not much else to say other than I hope you enjoyed this. I hope to see you on the next one. And from one collector to all of you, have a good night. Thank you for watching The Disconnected. On the way out, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, that you've liked the video, and that you've copied the link to be able to share with someone else that may appreciate this.